Good morning and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View. There's a bit of a war of words going on in the media between us and them, but there's a lot of speculation going around about transfers also. We'll talk about the whole situation with fans in a minute because I think it's a story that goes back to 2011, and I'm going to go back to 2011 for a reason. So stick around and make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Anyway, we move on to the speculation. Celtic, if you remember, were after the Brøndby striker back in the summer, and it looks like we might go back in for him. But will Celtic pay the money for the player? It's been suggested that Celtic are likely to make an approach for the talented striker once again with an improved offer. Remember, we fell short by about 200,000 or 300,000 in the summer, and that's a decision that has probably went against Celtic. I think that when you look at the way that we've been playing and the fact that we know that we're going to need a striker if Kyogo is called up for the Asia Cup, I definitely think O will be called up. But on Kyogo's form, will he be called up? That's one of the biggest questions over the next couple of weeks that will be answered at some point. Anyway, Celtic look as if they might go back in for Matthias Kidsford-Garden. Would that be a good... People are saying, look, his form's been absolutely down this season. Could that be the fact that he didn't get that move to Celtic that he thought, and he's maybe just had a bit of a downturn? Who knows? Anyway, there is another Polish striker that Celtic have been looking at, but it comes with a big price tag, and I can't see Celtic paying it. So we'll see what transpires over the next window. Let's look at what's going on with the Celtic and the Rangers. When you look at it, it's a war of words, and Celtic have cited safety fears. And obviously, we all know what's happened over the last couple of seasons. But let's go back to where this started. Let's go back to the root of the problem and what really happened. And we'll give a little bit of a history to younger fans that maybe don't remember those days. Anyway, will Celtic go on and spend 21 million? Tell me in the comments what you think. Celtic have hit back at the fact that there'll be no fans after Rangers have expressed extreme disappointment. Extreme disappointment, yeah. Take back to 2011, right? We're going to go right the way back. And the reason I want to go back to 2011 is because, let's face it, that's when it's all started. If you remember in 2011, Neil Lennon was in charge, and that would be the first of our steps to 9 in a row. And yes, the second time we've won 9 in a row. We have to remember ourselves that. Just remind ourselves that it is the second time that Glasgow Celtic has done 9 in a row. Anyway, in that season, there was a game, and it was called the Shame Game. Now, I was at the game, and to be fair, it was a heated game, and there was a few Rangers players sent off. From our perspective on the terraces, it didn't look like a shame game, but something happened at the end of that game, and it was then called the Shame Game, and the SNP brought in all sorts of legislation, and fans were jailed for singing songs, etc., etc. But that all happened on March 2011. Ever since then, they have went through a series of managers, and at that time it was Walter Smith who was the manager. Walter Smith was the manager, and they've had a lot of pretenders since then. And I need to talk about this because Celtic went on a course of domination of Scottish football over that time. They went through managers like Ali McCoist, Kenny McDowell, Stuart McCall, Mark Warburton, Graham Murty, Pedro Canixa, Graham Murty, Jimmy Nicholl, Stevie Gerrard. And you have to remember that Stevie Gerrard was at Rangers for 4 years, 4 seasons, but he's only remembered for the one important one, of course. But he was there for 4 seasons, and he couldn't get the better of the manager, who was Brendan Rodgers at the time. After then was Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, and then Michael Beale, up to the present day. Now, whilst they've had so many great pretenders over the years, Celtic have went on many, many trebles. And let's face it, they couldn't handle the fact that we were winning so much. And that's fact. It is fact. Now, there's a lot of people saying that, oh, look, they had to cut the allocation for financial reasons. No, they didn't. If you go into Google and you type in Club 1872 want to ban Celtic fans, they put pressure on the club. Their own fans put pressure to reduce the allocation. That's factual. That is factual. They put pressure on King back in the day to reduce the allocations because they were fed up of Celtic being dominant. And let's face it, look at the managers that I've had over the years. It isn't great reading for them, but what has it done to Scottish football? Has it killing the game? Is the lack of atmosphere at the Glasgow Derby? Because let's face it, the old firm died in 2012 when that club went into liquidation and ceased Yes, it ceased. Well, was it the club or the? Yeah, anyway, move on from that. Is it killing the Scottish game with the no atmosphere, with no fans? I think personally, it is for a TV coverage point of view, it's something that needs to be rectified. And Celtic want this rectified also. Celtic want to go back to 7,500 fans, both home and away. Now, there's people that say, no, we don't need them, we don't want them. Well, obviously, Scottish football as a TV spectacle does need it. When you look at the atmosphere when we beat them with no fans, no Celtic fans, remember, it was quite a surreal thing to watch on television because let's face it, we all watched it on television. There was a big crowd at Celtic Park watching it at Celtic Park in the stadium. But what has it done to the game? Let's look at it really. I mean, we know that they spat the dummy out, right? There's no disputing that. This is factual things that we're talking about. They spat the dummy out, they reduced the allocation. Club 1872 put pressure on King, and King went, right, okay, you need to take it up with you need to buy the season tickets, which they did. Fair enough to them. But it was always the case. There was always season tickets holders at both ends of the ground, and they knew that the season ticket holders wouldn't include the Glasgow derbies. It's nothing new. So this papering over the cracks saying that they did it for financial reasons is absolute complete nonsense. Now, then putting 750 fans into a corner and being pelted with missiles and all sorts of safety concerns were. I mean, they went from walking around from the industrial estate at Ibrox to Ibrox Park, and there was about a 100-yard gap between the fans. And it was probably one of the safest games that you can actually go to. The Glasgow Derby isn't what it was back in the 80s and early 90s. You know, it's probably I've always said this, it's probably one of the safest games you can go to because the fans are nowhere near each other at the ground. You know, they're kept apart. But when Celtic fans had to run the gauntlet to get into games and be put in a corner of the stadium where it was easy target for missile throwers, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable at all. And I think Celtic were quite within their right to refuse tickets to Ibrox at the beginning of the season. You remember, this has went on for a while, so it was at the beginning of the season. Celtic refused tickets on safety concerns. Celtic are quite right to want to get back to the good old days where there were 7,500 fans shouting and screaming abuse at each other and singing their songs. Let the people sing. Let the people sing. Tell me what you think about it in the comments. Are you for 7,500 fans returning back to the Glasgow Derby? And I'll even let Save Conan fans, Rangers fans comment on this video as well if they like. Do you think that it has diminished the atmosphere of the game? And let's not be nasty about it, right? Let's not be nasty about this. Let's think about it level-headed and look at it from a sports perspective. Let's look at it from a spectator's perspective. Let's look at it from a TV spectacle. I mean, do you really think that it is a better spectacle with no fans? Be honest about it. I mean, I want as many people to comment on this as possible and talk about it. So share this with friends and let's have a grown-up adult conversation because I think that's what's missing out of this is a grown-up adult conversation about it. I mean, it's always the same when you start any type of conversation with both sets of fans. It's they'll shout their abuse and they'll shout their abuse. It's let's get a bit level-headed. It's 2024, for goodness sake. If you want to go back through history, look at the managers of the great pretenders that Rangers have had since 2011, since that shame game. That wasn't a shame game. All it was McCoist said something to Lenny, and Lenny kicks off at the end of the game. Anyway, on that note, have a great day, Celtic fans all around the world.